Hello! Today I'm bringing to you a wizard's worst enemy, the open game license. Open Game License, or OGL, is 23 years old at this point and is important to the history of Dungeons & Dragons as a system for other writers and designers to create games, lore, or other various commercial products. Without it, third-party distributors and companies would have a hard time publishing material for at least 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons. Even nowadays, in the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, open game license is the lifeblood of third-party material. But we do need to go back a little bit to talk a little bit more about the necessity of open game license and sort of where the open game license come from. Back in the wild era of the 70s, when Nixon was experiencing Watergate, Dungeons & Dragons was new and had yet to be made popular by the satanic panic that would ensue from the game. Some competitors and supplements had arisen at this time that were sort of unofficially compatible with the rule books published by TSR, the then owners and creators of Dungeons & Dragons. It could arguably be copyright infringement, but I am no lawyer. I only know the laws I break. But these books had to be rewritten. One notable example is the game Trolls and Tunnels, which was released around on the era of the 1st edition of Dungeons & Dragons, where they had 4 variations of the same rules with different names attached to them. Don't ask me to explain the difference between them, I do not know. But Tunnels and Trolls had to change some things to remove connections from Dungeons & Dragons. One of the things that had to change was that it had to call itself a role-playing game. And technically I made it the first game to actually call itself a role-playing game. Few people really liked this approach TSR had to third-party content. And it's arguable that this led to a bunch of role-playing games being made, so they don't have to work around on Dungeons & Dragons. But there are other factors that could have just led to the explosion of role-playing games at the time, such as the fact that role-playing games were new and niche. Years passed by and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition came out, and it unfortunately lost its health as a game the same way kids on fitness TikTok lose their money. Too many supplements. There was an absurd amount at the time, and there wasn't a real playtest policy at TSR to my understanding. Apparently, the head of TSR at that time just didn't believe workers should play on their job, even though the job of people at TSR was mostly game designers, which involves playtesting. Yeah, balance was not necessarily on the table, and TSR experienced a lot of financial difficulties, and so they were acquired by Wizards of the Coast. Workers from TSR transferred to Wizards, and they decided to make a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons, now just called Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition. Now, in developing Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition, Ryan Dancy, the then Vice President of Wizards, thought of the open game license to sort of do the opposite of what TSR did in previous editions, and as a way of creating good relationships with third-party companies. The open game license was envisioned as a license that would endure for decades. Now, Ryan modeled the open game license off of open source licenses in the software industry. Open source licenses are cool. They allow developers and organizations to use tools and software without needing to pay anyone to use them. It also allows people to add on to the code, make updates, patch things up, which really does help with longevity. Although they aren't paid necessarily to do so, but it's still really cool. The open game license follows similar principles. Game writers don't need to give royalty to Wizards when they write new rules or develop deviations to the rules of Dungeons & Dragons. And the open game license actually states that what you create is your own work, and what you create under the OGL is distributable. So Wizards cannot really sue you for just making something that's compatible with their rules, as long as you don't actually use his trademark stuff from Wizards, like Mind Flayers or Beholders, and you include a copy of the OGL in your material, you're good. Wizards will allow you to publish it. And after OGL and 3rd edition were published, third-party content just blossomed. We had so many source books, adventures, and adaptations of other media into the rules of Dungeons & Dragons that it actually created a problem. There was an oversaturation of content for D&D. There was just so much. The D20 system, which is what the cool mechanics for 3rd edition were called, became the go-to for every RPG around this period. Everywhere you go, it's D&D, the D20 icon. Look, World of Warcraft, but D&D. Hey, Judge Dredd, but D&D. And Big Eyes, Small Mouth, but D&D. The hell is Big Eyes, Small Mouth? Why are we bringing some weeb shit here? The problem got a little weirder when Wizards updated the rules. They created 3.5th edition. I know what you're thinking. What is a half edition? What does that entail? It's pretty much 3rd edition, but they changed enough of it that you cannot actually call it 3rd edition. They updated the rules enough to facilitate a new name for the edition. And now you suddenly have books that may not be compatible with 3.5 edition. Some had to update their rules set, and you had to worry about whether the third-party book you made is going to be compatible with this new half edition. But worrying about new editions isn't stopping with 3.5 edition. Wizards began subtly playtesting new rules through source books and such around the 2000s. I was very late into the 3rd edition and lifespan. And yeah, there was a lot of question about what these new rules were for, if it was for new edition or not. We eventually learned there was gonna be a new edition, but then we got a bigger question. What about OGL? Is that gonna apply to the new edition? I mean, Section 9 of OGL stated that no updates to the license will validate any previous licenses for products you distributed. Yeah, but, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll not try a different license to restrict third-party content and exert more control over them. Which is exactly what they did. It's called Game System License. It is the only license as you can use to create products compatible with Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition as a third party. And it is more restrictive in some weird ways. For one, in its original draft, there are poison and pill clauses that prevented third parties from publishing anything in older licenses once they agree to this license, which is not really good for some third parties who probably still want to work with 3rd edition. And also, its system reference document is so much more bare bones than 3rd editions. Okay, so system reference documents are basically rules and writing creators of games put out that other creators can legally use how they want. So 3rd edition's SRD contain the rules for the core mechanics, the classes, and some races, a few items, and some other things. It's what you would need to create stuff for 3rd edition. 4th edition's SRD contains a lot of terms and where they are defined. but no actual rules or definitions. It's very weird to just give this out to creators who want to make stuff for your game. Just not really that helpful. I mean, the game system license was revised, nice to be better and more friendly, but it's still not as good as open game license, which everyone pretty much likes. And the good rapport between Wizards and third parties was damaged. So a third-party publishing company called Paizo decided to update the 3rd edition rules, release it under OGL, calling it Pathfinder. And they really took up the space that Wizards sort of left when they moved to 4th edition. And we'll see something similar happen later, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I need to foreshadow only a couple things. I can't foreshadow too much. 4th edition already had a messy reception. It's not looked back upon fondly, but the contention isn't with the game system license. But there was a lack of third-party books, which didn't create confidence in this new edition. But don't worry about that. Forget about that for a moment. Because Wizards, they got their skateboards. Went to lids. Here's how I get lit with the kids for 5th edition. And now everything's back to the way it was during 3rd edition. Simpler mechanics. Stuff that everyone can agree upon is good. Even an OGL license for 5th edition. And its SRD actually has the rules of the game. Wow! The future is really here! And we forgot about what we were angry about in 4th edition. I never played, so I don't know what we were upset about. Yes, Pathfinder is still keeping 3rd edition alive, but Wizards is on a path to success, like laid out a brick road of success. As Dungeons & Dragons is now the mainstream. Now, you're a nerd for not being a campaign with your friends. What are you doing? Going there. Come on, get over here. Just roll some dice. And also, anyone can make third-party content for it because of OGL. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? One D&D was announced. We don't know if it's a new edition or simply an update to 5th edition. But what we know is it's the next version of Dungeons & Dragons. And with that announcement comes speculation. Not just of the rules or how they plan to leverage a proprietary virtual tabletop, which they have been in talks about, but what will change with open game license? Well, in 2022, we find out. OGL 1.1 was leaked, and it's bad. It's very, very bad. To summarize what makes it bad. It revoked the original OGL and flies in the face of Section 9 of OGL 1.0a, saying no worker can retroactively lose the license. You have to use the commercial license if you get paid by your brother for doing your chores for a week. And that's the exact wording they use in this draft. If you make more than $50,000 in gross revenue in 1 year from your stuff, you gotta give Wizards a copy of your ledger so they verify that's legit. If you make more than $750,000 in gross revenue in 1 year, they need to pay Hasbro 20 to 25% of your gross revenue over her $750,000 gross revenue, as in how much you make before you calculate expenses. You could legit go bankrupt with this license. Wizards will own the copyright and trademark for anything licensed under this version of OGL. Well, technically it's all to you, but good luck doing much with it compared to Wizards. Oh, also, no videos, games, novels, apps, graphic novels, songs, musics, and pantomimes can be made without Wizards' permission. Also, legitimate writing. Who here has been making pantomime? They can change any agreement with 30 days notice. And also, you revoke your right to sue Wizards for their decisions by using this license, which is illegal in many countries. Isn't that such funny? I cannot begin to describe the backlash Wizards got. So many publishers just dropped shit from that. Cobalt Press decided to make their own version of D&D under the Black Flag project. And Paizo sold out of 8 months worth of stock quickly. And speaking of Paizo, they collaborate with a bunch of RPG writers and developers to create a license known as Open RPG Creative License, or ORC for short. It plans to be like OGL and owned by a law firm that has represented publishers in the past. And also not tied to Dungeons & Dragons, which is really good. So Wizards on that part sort of admitted they made a noopsie. And decided, instead of just having the draft leaked, they're going to preview it and put out a survey. So we saw OGL 1.2. It's bad. OGL 1.08 would still be deauthorized. You waive your right to jury trial by taking this license. Seriously. Oh, and there's a whole separate virtual tabletop policy not listed as OGL, meaning that Wizards can change it at any time without needing to violate the OGL sections pertaining to changes. The VTT policy explicitly prevents animation because then they would consider that a video game. Fortunately, Wizards rolled a natural 20 on their wisdom row. They actually made a good decision after hearing the fan outcry. They announced that opposed to D&D Beyond, they will leave OGL 1.08 as is and put the 5th edition SRD under Creative Commons license, which is a license they cannot revoke or alter in any way. This gives people the freedom to create without any restrictions they want to introduce in various versions of OGL. Which is good. Congratulations, players and creators involved with Dungeons & Dragons. You have actually convinced a big corporation to not exert so much control on third-party content. But that is pretty much it for the story of OGL and Dungeons & Dragons. So far, the Open RPG Creative License has gone through its final draft, so that's an alternative to OGL. And the Black Flag project is now Tales of Valiant. We'll host a Kickstarter in early 2024. So you gotta keep an eye out for that if you're tired of 5th edition or just want to support a different company. Oh, and also 1D&D is still being playtested through Unchained Arcana. I hear a lot of things about it. Mixed things about it, by the way. And plus, Wizard is still working on its own virtual tabletop. How it will fare, I don't know, but they're pushing it. People are wondering how Wizards might turn this into a money-making machine. But, for now, the threat to OGL is over thanks to collective voice of creators and players of Dungeons & Dragons. And Wizards. They do nothing else or say anything else that could anger anyone. Oh, for Thank you for watching the video. I appreciate it a lot. This took a long time. I learned a lot of things while editing and made some regrets. Let's just put it at that. Please subscribe if you want to watch more. Please comment whatever ideas you have for any topics I can talk about in other videos. Always make sure to check out when I stream on YouTube right now. Because I started streaming on YouTube after Twitch then oopsie like they always do. So yeah, I stream on Mondays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central. Also, if you're wondering if I'm streaming and you're watching this at that time, I'm probably streaming right now. What are you doing? But anyways, thank you for watching the video. Please like the video. And please watch something else. Bye-bye.